The rain hammered against the restaurant windows like nature's own drumroll, announcing the performance of my marriage's final act. 38 years on this planet, and I'd never felt quite so much like a supporting character in my own story until tonight. The anniversary dinner at Chez Laurent, our anniversary dinner, had somehow become a threesome, and not the fun kind. Elias, you remember Drew, right? Noemi's voice carried that particular pitch she used when she was pretending something awkward was perfectly normal. My best friend from college? Best friend. Right. The guy who'd been texting my wife at 2 a.m. for the past 3 months. The same guy who somehow knew exactly which wine she preferred, down to the vintage. The same guy who was now ordering a bottle of Chateau Margaux that cost more than I made in a week at my auto shop. Of course I remember Drew, I said, forcing a smile that probably looked like I was passing a kidney stone. Hard to forget someone who orders $500 wine on someone else's tab. Drew laughed, that entitled prep school chuckle that made me want to introduce his face to the nearest brick wall. Come on, Elias, it's your anniversary. Live a little. Live a little. Easy for him to say. He wasn't the one watching his wife light up like a Christmas tree every time this overgrown frat boy opened his mouth. He wasn't the one noticing how Noemi had worn her good perfume, the expensive stuff she usually saved for client meetings. He wasn't the one watching his wife's hand creep closer to another man's across the white tablecloth. I excused myself to the restroom, but instead of heading to the John, I made a beeline for our waiter. Separate checks, I told him quietly, sliding him a 20. Mine and theirs. The kid looked confused. But sir, the gentleman already said, the gentleman can say whatever he wants. I'm paying for what I ate and drank. Period. Back at the table, Noemi and Drew were deep in conversation about some architectural project she was working on. The kind of animated discussion she used to have with me back when I was worth talking to. Back when I wasn't just the guy who fixed cars and paid the mortgage. You know what? I stood up, dropping my napkin on the plate. I just remembered I've got an early morning tomorrow. Mrs. Henderson's bringing her Buick in at 7. Noemi barely looked up. Oh, okay. Drew can give me a ride home. Of course he could. I walked out into the rain, leaving them with their expensive wine and their inside jokes and their not-so-subtle flirtation. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my truck. 53 missed calls by the time I got home. 53 increasingly frantic messages about the bill, about embarrassment, about how I'd ruined everything. Sitting in my kitchen at midnight, listening to the rain drum against the roof, I felt something shift inside me. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was something colder, more calculating. The same feeling I got when I looked under the hood of a car and saw exactly what was wrong, exactly how to fix it, or in this case, exactly how to break it. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. $23,000 in checking, $47,000 in savings, all of it about to take a little trip to an account that only had my name on it. I'd opened it years ago for business expenses, back when Noemi still pretended to care about my little garage. The transfers took less than 5 minutes. By morning, my cheating wife and her boyfriend would discover that love doesn't pay the bills. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and raised the glass to the empty kitchen. Happy anniversary, sweetheart. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The pounding on my shop door started at 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes before I officially opened. Through the glass, I could see Noemi's silhouette, her perfectly styled hair now looking like she'd stuck her finger in an electrical socket. Drew lurked behind her, his usual smug expression replaced by something approaching panic. I took my time walking over, sipping my coffee and enjoying the show. When I finally unlocked the door, Noemi burst in like a woman possessed. "What did you do?" she demanded. waving her phone in my face. "The bank says our accounts are frozen." "Not frozen," I corrected, settling behind my desk with deliberate calm. "Relocated, for security purposes." "Security purposes?" Drew stepped forward, puffing out his chest like some kind of suburban peacock. "You can't just steal money from joint accounts." I looked him up and down slowly, the way I might examine a particularly rusty transmission. "Steal? That's an interesting word choice, coming from someone who's been stealing my wife for 3 months. The color drained from Drew's face. Nomi's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "I don't know what you think you know," she started. "I know about the late-night texts," I interrupted, pulling out my phone. "The ones where you discuss how boring your husband is. The ones where you plan your little rendezvous. The ones where you laugh about how clueless I am." I'd been forwarding her messages to my email for weeks. Amazing what you can learn when your wife leaves her phone unlocked during her morning shower. Even more amazing what people will admit in writing when they think nobody's watching. "Elias, please," Nomi's voice cracked. "We can talk about this. We can work it out." "Oh, we're going to work it out," I agreed. "Just not the way you think." Drew tried a different approach. "Look, man, I get that you're upset, but this is between you and Noemi. Don't drag innocent people into your marital problems." I laughed, actually laughed, at that. "Innocent? That's rich. Tell me, Drew, what's innocent about ordering wine on another man's credit card while you're planning to take his wife home?" "We didn't," Noemi began. "Didn't what? Didn't go back to his place? Didn't spend 3 hours there while I waited up like some kind of fool?" I stood up, enjoying the way they both took a step back. "Here's how this works. You want access to those accounts? File for divorce. Until then, every penny stays exactly where I put it." Drew's face was turning an interesting shade of purple. "This is extortion!" "No," I said, walking past them to flip my open sign. "This is consequences, something you've both managed to avoid for quite a while." My first customer of the day chose that moment to walk in, Mrs. Henderson with her ancient Buick. Perfect timing. "Morning, Mrs. Henderson," I called cheerfully. "Right on schedule. Noemi was just leaving." Mrs. Henderson looked back and forth between my wife's tear-streaked face and Drew's obvious agitation. Small towns are wonderful things. By noon, half the neighborhood would know that Noemi Corvin had been crying in her husband's garage at 7 in the morning, accompanied by some man who definitely wasn't her husband. "We're not done," Noemi hissed as she headed for the door. "No," I agreed, "we're really not." They left in Drew's BMW, the one with the custom paint job and the personalized plates that screamed, "compensating for something." I made a mental note of the license number. Never knew when that might come in handy. Mrs. Henderson watched them go, then turned to me with raised eyebrows. "Everything all right, Elias?" "Just working through some mechanical problems," I told her. "Nothing that can't be fixed with the right tools." I spent the morning under the hood of the Buick, but my mind was elsewhere, planning. Noemi thought she knew me, thought I was just some blue-collar guy who'd roll over and take whatever she dished out. Drew thought I was beneath his notice, some grease monkey who didn't deserve respect. They were both about to learn how wrong they were. By lunchtime, I'd made 3 phone calls. The first was to my sister Sandra, who worked at the local newspaper and had a talent for spreading information. The second was to my lawyer, just to make sure I was staying on the right side of legal. The third was to a guy I knew who specialized in background checks. Drew Halden was about to discover that his past wasn't nearly as buried as he thought. Sandra showed up at my shop during my lunch break, carrying 2 sandwiches and wearing the expression she'd perfected in childhood, the one that meant someone was about to get what they deserved. "So," she said, settling into the folding chair I kept for customers, "tell me about this Drew character." My sister was 41, divorced twice, and had spent the last 5 years building a network of contacts that would make the CIA jealous. Her job at the newspaper was officially lifestyle reporter, but unofficially, She was the town's information hub. Mothers' groups, book clubs, yoga classes. If gossip had a central nervous system, Sandra was the brain. Drew Halden, I said, unwrapping my sandwich. Tech consultant, drives a BMW, orders expensive wine on other people's tabs. And he's been sniffing around Noemi. More than sniffing. Sandra nodded, pulling out her phone. Give me an hour. While she worked her magic, I focused on the task at hand, Mrs. Henderson's Buick. There was something therapeutic about fixing things, about taking something broken and making it whole again. Unlike marriages, cars were honest. When they had problems, they told you exactly what was wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. We need to talk. Drew, apparently. I deleted it without responding. 20 minutes later, another text. Answer your phone. We can work this out like adults. Adults. Right. Adults didn't sneak around behind their spouse's back. Adults didn't order wine they couldn't afford. Adults didn't think they could charm their way out of consequences. I blocked the number. Sandra looked up from her phone, grinning. Oh, this is good. Drew Halden, 36, divorced last year. Want to guess why? Cheating? Cheating. His ex-wife posted about it on 3 different social media platforms. Apparently, he has a pattern of going after married women. Something about the challenge. The wrench in my hand tightened involuntarily. What else? 2 previous bankruptcies, both blamed on business partnerships gone wrong. Currently behind on his car payments, that pretty BMW is 3 months overdue. And here's the interesting part. He's been posting on dating apps about looking for financially stable women for mutually beneficial arrangements. I felt that cold smile spreading across my face again. Send me everything. Already did. Check your email. Sandra took a bite of her sandwich. What's your play here? Phase 1 was financial isolation. Phase 2 is social exposure. And Phase 3? Phase 3 is where it gets interesting. That afternoon, I printed out Drew's dating profiles and his ex-wife's social media posts. Amazing how much people shared online when they thought nobody was paying attention. Photos, locations, timestamps, a complete roadmap of bad decisions and worse character. At 4 o'clock, I drove to Noemi's architecture firm. Not to see her, I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. Instead, I had a chat with the receptionist, a sweet kid named Amy, who'd always been friendly when I'd picked Noemi up from work. Hi, Mr. Corvin, she said brightly. Are you here for Noemi? Actually, I was hoping to speak with Mr. Patterson. Patterson was the senior partner, a man who'd built his reputation on family values and community trust. Is everything okay? I put on my most concerned expression. I'm not sure. There's been some unusual activity on our joint accounts, and I wanted to make sure Noemi wasn't having any problems at work. Stress, you know. Sometimes people make poor decisions when they're under pressure. Amy's face clouded with worry. Oh no. Is there anything I can do? Just keep an eye on her, would you? I'm worried about the people she's been spending time with lately. Not everyone has her best interests at heart. I left without seeing Patterson, but I knew Amy would mention our conversation. In a small firm like Noemi's, news traveled fast. By tomorrow, everyone would be wondering what kind of unusual activity I'd been talking about. My phone rang as I drove home. Noemi. Elias, please. This is getting out of hand. Is it? I kept my voice neutral. Seems pretty controlled to me. People are talking. Amy asked me if everything was okay at home. Mrs. Henderson called my mother. This is humiliating. Humiliating, I repeated. Interesting choice of words. Tell me, how do you think I felt last night watching you flirt with another man at our anniversary dinner? Silence. Here's the thing, Noemi. You wanted excitement. You wanted drama. You wanted something different from your boring husband and your predictable life. Congratulations, you got it. This isn't what I wanted. No? Then what did you want? Because from where I'm sitting, It looks like you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. Keep the stable husband, the nice house, the joint bank accounts, but also have your fun on the side with Mr. Wonderful. It wasn't like that. Then explain it to me. Help me understand how 3 months of secret texts and late-night meetings and anniversary dinners with your boyfriend aren't exactly like that. Another long silence. I want to come home, she said finally. We can talk about this properly. Home, I mused. You mean the home you've been lying about? The home you couldn't wait to leave so you could spend time with Drew? That home? Elias, the locks are changed, I said calmly. Your stuff is in storage. Unit 247 at Westside Self-Storage. The key is with my lawyer. The sound she made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. You can't do this. Actually, I can. It's my house. My name on the deed. Another one of those boring details you never paid attention to. I hung up and turned off my phone. At home, my home, I poured myself a drink and sat on the porch, watching the rain. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 was underway. Phase 3 would require more planning, but I had time. All the time in the world. The beauty of small towns is that secrets don't stay secret for long. By Thursday morning, the whole network was buzzing. Sandra had done her job perfectly, spreading just enough information to get people talking without crossing any legal lines. Drew's dating profile screenshots were making the rounds through the local mother's Facebook group, along with his ex-wife's testimonials about his character. I was replacing brake pads on a Honda Civic when Mara Elgin walked into my shop. Noemi's best friend, yoga instructor, and according to my research, a woman with her own interesting history of failed relationships and questionable business practices. Elias, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. We need to talk. I didn't look up from my work. Do we? This has gone far enough. Noemi is devastated. She's staying at my place, crying herself to sleep every night. Sounds like a personal problem. Mara stepped closer, lowering her voice to what she probably thought was a seductive whisper. Look, I know you're hurt. I know this situation is complicated, but destroying her life isn't going to fix your marriage. Now I did look up. Mara was attractive in that artificial way that screamed high maintenance and daddy issues. Bleached hair, fake tan, yoga pants that cost more than most people's car payments. The kind of woman who thought her looks were a universal problem solver. Who said anything about fixing my marriage? She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. I just thought, don't you want to work things out? With a woman who's been cheating on me for 3 months? With a woman who brought her boyfriend to our anniversary dinner? I shook my head. I don't think so. It wasn't serious, Mara insisted. It was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. Drew can be very persuasive. Persuasive, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? She tried a different approach, moving closer and putting her hand on my arm. You know, Elias, you don't have to be alone in this. I've always thought you were underappreciated. I stared at her hand until she removed it. Let me guess. This was Noemi's idea? Send her hot friend to seduce the angry husband back into line? Mara's face flushed. That's not... Because if it was, you can tell her it's not going to work. I'm done being manipulated by women who think I'm too stupid to see what's happening. Nobody thinks you're stupid. No? Then why did she think she could get away with it? Why did Drew think he could humiliate me in public and face no consequences? Why do you think you can walk in here and bat your eyelashes and make this all go away? Mara's expression shifted, the fake sweetness replaced by something harder. Fine. You want to play hardball? 2 can play that game. Is that a threat? It's a reality check? You think you're the only one with dirt? You think your precious reputation is bulletproof? She smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. Everyone knows about your little drinking problem after your dad passed. Everyone knows about the gambling debts you racked up 5 years ago, push too hard, and all of that becomes public knowledge. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not fear, something else. Recognition, the pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. How do you know about the gambling debts? Small town, Elias, people talk. But that wasn't true. I'd been very careful about that period of my life. Only 3 people knew the full extent of what had happened. Myself, my lawyer, and the counselor I'd seen to get my act together. The records were sealed, the debts paid off, the whole mess buried. Unless someone had been digging, someone with access to information they shouldn't have. You know what, Mara? You're right. 2 can play that game. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo Sandra had sent me. Tell me, how long have you been running your yoga studio without proper certification? Her face went white. Or should we talk about the insurance fraud from your divorce, the one where you claimed your ex-husband destroyed property that you'd already sold? How did you— Small town, I said, echoing her words. People talk. She backed toward the door, her composure completely shattered. This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's really not. After she left, I sat in my office and thought about what had just happened. Mara's knowledge of my past troubles wasn't casual gossip. It was too specific, too detailed. Someone had been investigating me, preparing ammunition for exactly this kind of confrontation, which meant this whole thing was more orchestrated than I'd realized. I called Sandra. I need you to dig deeper into Mara Elgin. Something's not right. What kind of not right? The kind where she knows things she shouldn't know. The kind where she's playing a bigger game than just supporting her friend. Give me until tomorrow. That evening, I drove past Drew's apartment complex, a generic luxury development that screamed, trying too hard. His BMW was in its assigned spot, but there was something different about it, something that made me smile. Someone had keyed the entire driver's side from headlight to tail light, deep gouges that would cost thousands to repair. On the windshield, written in what looked like lipstick, was a single word: liar. I hadn't done it. Didn't need to. Apparently, Drew's reputation was preceding him now, and someone else had decided to take matters into their own hands. My phone buzzed with a text from yet another unknown number. We need to meet. This has to stop. This time it was Noemi. I typed back, West Side Diner, tomorrow, noon. It was time for the next phase. The West Side Diner occupied the kind of building that had seen better decades. Vinyl booths patched with duct tape, fluorescent lights that flickered just enough to give you a headache, and coffee that could strip paint. It was also public enough that Noemi couldn't make a scene without witnesses, and neutral enough that I wouldn't be tempted to say things I might regret. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Good. Maybe sleepless nights would give her some perspective on what I'd been going through. Thank you for coming, she said, as I slid into the opposite seat. Don't thank me yet. The waitress, Dolores, who'd been working here since the Carter administration, shuffled over with a pot of coffee. The usual, Elias? Just coffee, thanks. Dolores looked at Noemi with the kind of polite disdain reserved for people who ordered salads in diners. And you, hun? Coffee's fine. When we were alone, Noemi leaned forward, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. This has to stop. You're destroying both our lives. I'm destroying our lives? I kept my voice level. That's an interesting perspective. You know what I mean. The bank accounts, the gossip, the public humiliation. People are treating me like some kind of pariah. Actions have consequences, I said. Novel concept, I know. She flinched. I made a mistake, okay? I admit it. I handled things badly. But this isn't justice, Elias. This is revenge. You're right, I agreed. It is revenge. The question is, what did you expect? I expected you to be an adult about it. I laughed. Actually laughed at that. An adult, right. Adults communicate with their spouses instead of sneaking around behind their backs. Adults don't bring their affair partners to anniversary dinners. Adults don't humiliate their husbands in public restaurants. I never meant for it to go that far. But it did go that far, and now you're dealing with the fallout. Noemi's composure cracked. I loved you, Elias. Part of me still does. But you stopped seeing me. You stopped trying. You came home from work, ate dinner, watched TV, and went to bed. Every day, the same routine. I felt invisible. So, you decided to become visible with Drew. I decided to feel alive again, she snapped. When was the last time you took me somewhere nice without me having to ask? When was the last time you surprised me with anything? When was the last time you acted like you actually wanted to be married to me? The words hit harder than I'd expected, mostly because there was truth in them. I had gotten comfortable. I had stopped trying, but that didn't justify what she'd done. You could have talked to me, I said. You could have asked for counseling. You could have done 100 different things before you decided to cheat. I tried talking to you. You always said you were too tired or too busy or too stressed about money. Every conversation turned into an argument about bills or the house or your precious garage. So you talked to Drew instead. Drew listened to me. Drew made me feel interesting again. Drew acted like my opinions mattered. Drew was married too, you know. His ex-wife has some very interesting stories about his listening skills. Noemi's face flushed. This isn't about Drew. Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you traded one inattentive husband for another woman's inattentive husband. How's that working out for you now that his reputation is public knowledge? She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup. He's been distant since this all started. Shocking. He says he needs space to figure things out, that the pressure is too much. And there it is, I said. The moment things get complicated, Prince Charming disappears. Just like he did with his ex-wife. Just like he'll do with the next married woman who falls for his act. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices. But please, Elias, can't we find a way to fix this? I studied her face, the face I'd woken up next to for 12 years, the face I'd once thought I'd grow old with. There was genuine remorse there, genuine pain, but there was also something else, something calculating. What did Mara tell you to say? What? Mara. Your best friend and relationship advisor, the one who's been coaching you through this whole mess. What did she tell you to say to get me to back down? This isn't about Mara. Everything's about Mara lately. She came to see me yesterday, you know. Tried the seduction approach first, then moved on to threats when that didn't work. Noemi's eyes widened. She what? Oh, you didn't know? Your best friend offered to console me in my time of need. Very generous of her, very supportive of your marriage. That's not... She wouldn't... She also threatened to expose some personal information about my past if I didn't back off. Information that only a few people should have access to. I watched Noemi's face carefully, looking for signs of recognition or guilt. Instead, I saw confusion and something that looked like genuine surprise. I don't understand, she said. Neither do I, yet. But I'm going to. My phone buzzed with a text from Sandra. You need to see this. Now. I stood up, dropping a $5 bill on the table. This conversation is over. Elias, please. No more pleases, no more explanations, no more chances. I looked down at her, this woman who'd shared my bed and my life and my dreams, and felt nothing but cold determination. You made your choice. Now live with it. I walked out of the diner and into the parking lot, where Sandra was waiting by my truck with a manila folder in her hands. You're not going to believe this, she said. Sandra handed me the folder with the expression of someone who'd just discovered a particularly nasty species of bug under a rock. Mara Elgin, she said. Real name, Mara Elgin Patterson Walsh. 3 marriages, 3 divorces, 2 bankruptcies, and 1 very interesting connection to your wife's architecture firm. I opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. Bank records, court filings, business licenses, a paper trail that painted a picture of systematic deception and financial manipulation. She worked at Patterson and Associates 5 years ago, Sandra continued, briefly, as a receptionist. Want to guess why she left? Let me guess. She was terminated for cause. Embezzlement. Small amounts but consistent. Patterson didn't press charges because he didn't want the publicity, but he made sure she'd never work in the industry again. I kept reading. Mara's pattern was clear. Target successful men, preferably married ones, manipulate them into financial arrangements, then disappear when things got complicated. Her yoga studio was funded by her second ex-husband, who was still paying alimony based on fraudulent claims about her earning potential. But here's the really interesting part, Sandra said. Guess who recommended Noemi for her current position at Patterson and Associates? I looked up from the papers. Mara, who had maintained a friendship with Patterson's wife despite being fired, who suggested that her dear friend from college would be perfect for their new junior architect position. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't like at all. She's been playing a long game, I said. Gets better. Remember how she knew about your gambling debts? I tracked down where that information came from. She hired a private investigator 6 months ago. Not to investigate you, to investigate potential targets for some kind of investment scam she was planning. Targets? Successful local businessmen with assets, but also vulnerabilities. You were on the list because of the garage's recent expansion and your clean credit history. The gambling debts were just bonus ammunition in case she needed leverage. I felt that cold anger settling deeper into my bones. She orchestrated this whole thing. That's my theory. Think about it. She's Noemi's best friend, her confidant. She knows your marriage has been strained. She introduces Drew into the social circle, encourages the friendship, maybe even pushes things toward an affair. But why? Sandra pulled out another document. Because a bitter divorce means liquid assets. Houses get sold, retirement accounts get split, people make desperate financial decisions. And who's right there to offer helpful advice and investment opportunities? Noemi's best friend, who just happens to know about some great deals that require immediate cash investment. I stared at the papers, seeing my marriage, my life, as pieces on someone else's chessboard. Mara hadn't been supporting Noemi through a difficult time. She'd been engineering the difficult time from the beginning. There's more, Sandra said. Drew's not just some random tech consultant. He's worked with Mara before, on at least 2 previous schemes. They target couples. He seduces the wife. She offers financial advice to both parties during the inevitable divorce. And they split the profits. Exactly. Except this time, you didn't follow the script. You were supposed to be the devastated husband, desperate to liquidate assets for a quick divorce settlement. Instead, you went on the offensive. I closed the folder, my mind racing through the implications. Every conversation with Mara, every piece of advice she'd given Noemi, every moment of support, it had all been manipulation, designed to push my marriage toward the most profitable conclusion. Where are they now? Drew's been staying at Mara's place since his apartment got vandalized. Noemi's been there too, playing the victim while Mara plays the supportive friend. And they're planning their next move. Probably. The question is, what's your next move? I thought about it. The old Elias, the one who fixed cars and paid bills and tried to keep everyone happy, would have taken this information to the police, filed reports, hired lawyers, played by the rules while Mara and Drew moved on to their next victims. But the old Elias was gone, replaced by someone harder and smarter and considerably less concerned with playing fair. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, I said. Sandra raised an eyebrow. Which is? A desperate husband, ready to make bad financial decisions. I spent the rest of the afternoon planning. If Mara wanted to play chess, I'd play chess. But she was about to discover that underestimating your opponent is the fastest way to lose the game. At 6 o'clock, I called Noemi. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her, "about trying to fix things." "Really?" The hope in her voice was almost painful to hear. "Really. But I can't do it alone. I need help. Professional help. The kind that costs money. Money we don't have access to because you froze the accounts." "I know. That's why I'm willing to liquidate some assets. Sell the garage, maybe. Use the money for counseling, for a fresh start." There was a long pause. "You'd sell the garage? If that's what it takes to save our marriage?" "Oh, Elias." She was crying now, but they sounded like tears of relief rather than despair. "I love you. We can make this work." "I hope so, but I'm going to need some advice on the financial side. Someone who understands investments, who can help me figure out the best way to handle the transition." "I might know someone," she said, right on cue. "Mara has some experience with business transactions." "Perfect," I said. "Set up a meeting." After I hung up, I sat in my office and smiled. Mara thought she was the puppet master, pulling strings from behind the curtain. She was about to learn that the puppet had cut his own strings and was coming for the puppet master. Game on. The meeting was set for Friday evening at Mara's yoga studio, a converted warehouse space that screamed trendy wellness with its exposed brick walls and motivational posters about inner peace. The irony wasn't lost on me that we were planning to discuss my financial surrender in a place dedicated to spiritual enlightenment. I arrived exactly on time, carrying a briefcase full of carefully prepared documents. Noemi was already there, looking nervous but hopeful. Drew lurked in the background, trying to project casual indifference, but failing to hide his obvious interest in the proceedings. And Mara sat behind her desk like a spider in the center of her web, radiating fake concern and predatory anticipation. "Elias," she said warmly, "I'm so glad you've decided to take a constructive approach to this situation." "Well," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk, "I realized that destroying my marriage wasn't going to solve anything. Sometimes you have to cut your losses and start over." "That's very mature of you." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I've had the garage appraised. Current market value is around $200,000, minus the outstanding loan. That leaves about $140,000 in equity." Mara's eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. "That's a substantial amount." "It is. The question is how to handle the transition. I'll need to find a new job, obviously, but I want to make sure the money is working for us while I figure out the next step." "There are definitely some opportunities," Mara said, leaning forward. "Some high-yield investments that could provide steady income while you're rebuilding." "What kind of opportunities?" She launched into a practiced pitch about emerging markets and cryptocurrency ventures and real estate development projects that promised enormous returns with minimal risk. It was a masterclass in financial seduction, designed to make desperate people believe in easy money. Drew chimed in occasionally with technical-sounding nonsense about market trends and algorithmic trading. Noemi nodded along, playing the role of supportive wife while probably calculating her share of the profits. I let them talk for 20 minutes, asking occasional questions and expressing appropriate levels of interest and concern. Finally, when they'd exhausted their sales pitch, I pulled out another document. "This all sounds very promising," I said. "But before we move forward, I need to address something." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What kind of something?" Mara asked. I placed a photograph on her desk. It showed her and Drew entering a hotel together 6 months ago, long before the affair with Noemi had started. "I need to understand the nature of your relationship with Drew." Mara's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." I placed another photograph on the desk. "This is you and Drew meeting with Patricia Morrison, who divorced her husband 8 months ago after discovering his affair. With you, Drew. Drew started to stand up. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, I said quietly. There was something in my voice that made him comply immediately. I placed a third photograph on the desk. This is you and Drew celebrating at the Hilton bar after Patricia Morrison liquidated her retirement account to invest in one of your opportunities. An investment that mysteriously disappeared along with both of you, forcing Patricia to move in with her sister and take a job at Walmart to pay her bills. The silence in the room was deafening. You want to know what I think? I continued, my voice conversational but cold. I think you've been running the same scam on multiple couples. Drew seduces the wife, creates marital discord, and you swoop in to offer financial advice during the divorce proceedings. You target people with assets but also vulnerabilities, gambling problems, drinking problems, family issues that make them desperate for quick solutions. That's ridiculous, Mara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Because I have documentation of at least 4 other couples who went through similar experiences. Sudden affairs, bitter divorces, bad investments that cost them everything, and in every case, the common denominator is you two. I turned to look at Noemi, who was staring at her best friend with growing horror. The affair wasn't about passion, or excitement, or feeling alive again. It was about money. Your money. Our money. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer. That's not true, Noemi whispered. Tell her, Mara, I said. Tell her about the private investigator you hired to research potential targets. Tell her about the hotel meetings with Drew. Tell her about Patricia Morrison and the Hendersons and the Kowalski family. Mara's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the calculating predator underneath. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone and showed her a recording app that had been running since I walked into the room. I can prove all of it. The question is whether I take it to the police or to the local newspaper first. Drew was already moving toward the door. I'm out of here. No, I said, standing up. You're not. He turned around, probably expecting to see the same mild-mannered mechanic he'd been dismissing for months. Instead, he saw someone who'd spent the last 2 weeks planning this moment, someone who'd been underestimated for the last time. You're going to sit down, I continued, and you're going to explain to my wife exactly how you manipulated her. You're going to tell her about your partnership with Mara, about your other victims, about how none of this was ever about her. And if I don't? I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then I make one phone call, and by tomorrow morning, everyone in town knows exactly what you are. Your face will be on the front page of the newspaper, along with Patricia Morrison's story, and the Hendersons' story, and everyone else's story. You'll be finished in this town, and probably the next 3 towns over. Drew looked at Mara, who was staring at her desk like it might offer some escape route. No help there. Fine, he said, slumping back into his chair. But this doesn't change anything between you and Noemi. Actually, I said, it changes everything. I turned to my wife, who was crying quietly in her chair. I'm sorry you got caught up in their game, but I'm not sorry for what I did to protect myself, and I'm not sorry that it's over between us. Elias, please. No more pleases, I said, echoing my words from the diner. No more second chances, no more trying to fix something that was broken by design. I packed up my briefcase and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Noemi demanding answers from Mara, Drew trying to make excuses, and the sound of a carefully constructed scheme falling apart. Outside, the rain had started again, washing the streets clean. I got in my truck and drove home. To my house, my sanctuary, my new beginning. The garage sale was scheduled for tomorrow. Not because I was desperate to liquidate assets, but because I was ready to start over. The old life, the old business, the old version of myself who'd been willing to accept disrespect and betrayal, all of it was going up for sale. I had plans, big plans. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to tomorrow. The devil in the rearview mirror was finally in front of me, and he was smiling.